Hey everyone, in this video we are going to be talking about chemical and physical changes. So we first are going to look at a physical change, and all that a physical change is that it changes, it's a change that alters a substance without, so it's a change that alters a substance without altering the composition. So I like to think of this one as though I may physically change something, but it's still going to be the same composition. So, for example, this is going to be reversible. Meaning that if I were to pour two things together, but I could separate them again, then that would be a physical change. If I were to take paper and I were to tear it up, but then I could put it back together again, then that would be a physical change. So they're reversible. They are also just a change in appearance / form. So for example, if we have a paper clip and we were to bend that paper clip, then that's just changing its appearance or form. Other things are phase changes. And what we mean by phase changes, or for example, if we went from a liquid to a gas, or we went from a solid to a liquid, basically, anytime that you are changing your state of matter, that's a phase change. That's a physical change because you can always reverse it. You can go back. Another one, and this one kind of depends, is dissolving. Okay? If something doesn't dissolve completely, then you can go through, you can separate it out, and that would be considered a physical change. Okay? Then, so those are physical changes. Now let's look at a chemical change. So a chemical change is when one or more substances change into a new substance through a chemical reaction. And the big thing with this one is this new substance. So you have to form something that is completely new that you cannot reverse. So the first thing is it's going to be irreversible, meaning that we can't undo it. So for example, burning something. If we had that paper that we were talking about earlier and we were to go through and burn it, it cannot come back to be paper. Okay, it's going to be ashes. Those ashes, we can't put them back together and it still be paper. Another chemical change is anytime that you are cooking, because you are going to be mixing things together, making new things. And then rusting is also a good indication of a chemical change. If something rots, that is also a chemical change. So rotting as well. Okay. Now, you may be like, well, Ms. Dupuy, why are we talking about physical changes and chemical changes? Well, the reason is we have to have a chemical change take place in order for a chemical reaction to take place. And so if you're like, well, why do we care about a chemical reaction, or what is a chemical reaction? So a chemical reaction is whenever we have a rearrangement of the molecules inside of our substance. So we're not just changing physically, but we are actually going to create something completely new. Okay? So let's talk about our evidence of a chemical reaction. And just to reiterate, if a chemical reaction has taken place, then a chemical change has taken place as well. So again, if a chemical reaction has taken place, then a chemical change has taken place. So one of the first things is an unexpected color change. Okay, so if you mix two things together and they change colors, then you have a chemical reaction. If you have a release of a gas, and you may be like, well, how do I know if it's a release of a gas? If you see bubbles, if it fizzes, if you see smoke, if it smells, okay, that's going to be a release of gas. And why I say that, the smells part, is because of sulfur. Sulfur smells horrible. And then we can also have the formation of a precipitate. And all a precipitate is just a solid. So if you mix two things together and then in the bottom of your test tube or your beaker you end up with a solid, that solid is a precipitate. Okay? And then the last way that we know that a chemical reaction has taken place is if we have a change in energy. And the way that we're going to know that we've had a change in energy is if you give off heat. So if you mix two things together and you feel of it and it's hot, then that means that you've had a change in energy. Or if you've just had a change in temperature. So if you were using a thermometer and you clearly saw that you either got hotter or you got colder whenever you mix two things together, then that would show you that a chemical reaction has taken place. And just to reiterate, if a chemical reaction has taken place, then a chemical change has taken place. Okay? And that is it for these notes.